Hi everyone. Today I wanted to continue on with my monthly perusal of the Criterion channel, what's new. Every month they add quite a few titles, 115 for the month of September. I'm I'm going to recommend some movies that, as always, fly under the radar. There's lots of great classic movies coming in the month of September, and I will leave links down below to either Criterion.com or CriterionCast.com, both of which go into great detail on all the movies that are premiering in September of 2021. Before I get to the recommendations, there are, I think, six movies that are premiering in complete editions. In other words, these are the movies that are in a physical Criterion release, but they also include all the supplements. And there's three fairly recent Criterion releases, which is physical releases, which is what the Criterion channel has been doing in the past year. But the older titles, Do the Right Thing, Clooney Brown, and I think La Cage aux Folles. So, and that's the French version, not the American remake. So those three, Do the Right Thing, La Cage aux Folles, Clooney Brown, will be on the channel now with all its supplements. And then, like, as I said, three recent ones, which are Irma Vep, The Flowers of Shanghai, and Working Girls. So these are all basically from the last 2 or 3 months, I believe. Let's get to what's coming on the channel. And Criterion channel, if you're familiar with it, they curate their what they're bringing into the new month. And the first one is Mammoth. It's called New York Stories. There's 64 titles. But when you go on the channel itself, they break them down into subcategories like film set in Brooklyn, film set in Queens, and so forth. I've already saw the first of the four out of these four out of this section that I'm going to recommend. One is Little Murders from 1971. This is a movie I watched last night. Really looking forward to seeing this one. It's directed by Alan Arkin. He has a small role in it, but it's starring Elliot Gould and Marcia Rod. It's just like no other movie, pretty much comedy-wise, you're ever going to see. It was a failed play in New York City, written by Jules Feiffer, a long-time cartoonist for the Village Voice and later for the New York Times. And it features Donald Sutherland, Vincent Gardenia. I don't know if you've ever seen Vincent Gardenia. This has to be a kind of signature role for him. He played similar parts, but here it's to the comic maximum. There's some homophobic dialogue in there, which was perhaps not as shocking or offensive in 1971 as it is 50 years later. But overall, this is just a one-of-a-kind kind of movie that I really enjoyed when I watched it last night. And the other three would be the first of the other three would be After Hours. This is from 1985, starring Griffin Dunne, Rosanna Arquette, directed by Martin Scorsese. This is one of his films. Between Raging Bull and Goodfellas, there's some really quirky little films in there. After Hours is certainly one of them. And we have Mrs. Parker in The Vicious Circle from '94. This is referring to Dorothy Parker, the Algonquin circle of intellectual repartee and witty writers. And Mrs. Parker is played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, and it's directed by Alan Rudolph. Alan Rudolph was a Robert Altman protege, and his films never got the kind of attention they might have deserved. I don't know. I haven't seen them in a long time, but he might be a candidate for some sort of reevaluation. And then the fourth of these New York stories is a movie I've never seen before, In the Cut. It's directed by Jane Campion. It stars Meg Ryan and Mark Ruffalo. Jennifer Jason Leigh is also in the cast in that one. And two other films that are in this New York story curated section are also fairly recent Criterion physical releases. That's Man, Push, Cart, and Chop Shop. And there's 19 movies with Deborah Kerr. This includes some of her famous Black Narcissus is there, Colonel Blimp, the later Chalk Garden with Haley Mills. And I did a video on the Chalk Garden 2-3 months ago. It's gotten over 1,000 views, and I celebrate if I get 50 to 100 views. So it's a title I guess people are really interested in. But the ones I'm going to recommend in this 19 movie section, The End of the Affair, this is from 1955 from the Graham Greene novel that was filmed more recently in the 90s, early 2000s by Neil Jordan with Ralph Fiennes and Rachel Weisz. This stars, not only does it star Deborah Kerr, Van Johnson playing the role that Ralph Fiennes plays in the remake. And the other one I want to recommend from this section is The Eye of the Devil. This is from 1966. It sounds a little bit like The Wicker Man, pagan rituals in a English manor house. Starring Deborah Kerr, but also co-starring David Niven. Sharon Tate is in the film. Donald Pleasance is in the film. It's definitely one I want to check out, and might be of interest to people who like that kind of supernatural horror film. Then there's 8 movies directed by Ernst Lubitsch, all of them worth seeing. Lubitsch, one of my all-time favorite directors. It doesn't include The Shop Around the Corner, but it does include To Be or Not to Be and The Notchka. The one I'm going to definitely check out is Angel from 1937 with Marlena Dietrich. I probably saw that back in the 1980s. Herbert Marshall, Melvin Douglas are in it. Lubitsch and Dietrich, yeah, sure, why not? Let's see what Dietrich was like. And I think she's only a couple films away from her Joseph von Sternberg collaborations. And then there's Titus from 1999, directed by Julie Taymor. I'm kind of into it's a 2-hour and 42-minute version of Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus with Anthony Hopkins playing the title role. I saw it in the theater once, and it was probably the most horrifying experience I've ever had in the theater, and or watching a movie. In a movie, you can turn it off, or when you're in a theater, that you're there, and but the horror was kind of exhilarating, as Shakespeare would be able to do, and it's one of those everybody dies kind of revenge stories from the Jacobean Elizabethan era. Revenge stories. Boy, there's lots of revenge in Titus. So I'm interested to see Hopkins as Titus, and Julie Taymor, who is visually certainly very ambitious director. Another film that caught my fancy was Crimson Gold from 2003. This is co-directed by Abbas Kiarostami and Jofar Panahi. And it's billed, described as a crime thriller, which, given those two directors, should be an interesting crime thriller. And then there's a director I've never seen any films by, and that's Akira Kurosawa. And Criterion has what they term as the Finland Trilogy. So it's actually 3 movies, and all set in Helsinki. I'm not sure if I ever saw a film set in Helsinki before, I probably have. They're called Drifting Clouds from '96, Man Without a Past from 2002, and the last one is Lights in the Dark. I believe that's from 2004. So those are my 10 recommendations. Again, a whole lot of classic movies there besides this. More famous movies. I always like to spotlight the ones that might fly below the surface that you might not ordinarily catch your eye. And I'll briefly go over, I think, 5 movies. They also, on the channel, they will give you what's leaving on September 30th. I think there's 64 leaving, 64 titles leaving, and the ones I've watched were Cutter's Way from 1981. This is by the Czech director Ivan Passer, and stars John Hurd and Jeff Bridges. A very, very good film. Lisa Eichhorn also in that movie. Then there's a 1949 film. I think it's Nicholas Ray's 3rd movie, called Knock on Any Door, which I really enjoyed, and any Bogart fan might want to see this. And any Jimmy Stewart fan would probably want to see Mr. Hobbs Takes a Vacation from 1962. I actually watched it twice. I love Jimmy Stewart. This is not one of his great movies, but he's so amusing in this. He gives the narration a vacation that just everything goes wrong on, and has some there's a few inspired comical moments in it. And of course, there's always, I think Maureen O'Hara plays his wife, and there's kids involved, romances involved, and I enjoyed it. Then there's Bingo Long's Traveling All-Stars and Motored Kings. This is from 1976. And this is a baseball movie. Got a fantastic cast of James Earl Jones, Billy D. Williams, Richard Pryor in a fairly small role, and not, you know, he's always funny, but this is more a dramatic role than his comic persona. And the last one, for those who have the Criterion channel, recommendation to catch up before it leaves on September 30th, is The Eyes of Laura Mars, and this is from 1978, Faye Dunaway, and this is the period of Faye Dunaway between Bonnie and Clyde and Mommy Dearest. And I love all these films that Faye Dunaway. I'm a big Faye Dunaway fan, and you know, I think she made some really interesting, somewhat strange movies in this era. And Eyes of Laura Mars is certainly can be accurately described as that. Okay, so that's my little tidbit on the Criterion channel for September of 2021 of what's coming, what's leaving, and you know, it's the only channel I got. I never even come close to seeing everything that I want to watch on the channel. So I got rid of all my other channels. Criterion channel is the only streaming service that I have. So that about wrap this video up. As always, thanks for everybody who listened. Comments would be welcome. You guys take care.